If she was willing to risk her job to reveal this urgent message to us, then we owe it the seriousness it deserves and should watch until the very end. To honor your time, I want to be clear from the very beginning. This experience carries an urgent and deeply personal message for those aged 50 and above, especially those in their 60s and 70s who have walked with God through many seasons of life. If you are younger than this age group, I encourage you to remain with us as well. What you are about to hear will help you. Take this urgent message to your parents, grandparents, spiritual mentors, and elders whose prayers have quietly carried families and nations. To everyone for whom this message is intended, I kindly ask you to share your location in the comments, so we can connect as one family and lift one another up in prayer. I also invite you to leave a word of advice or wisdom for the younger generation, something you have learned through your years of walking with God. Your words may reach someone at the exact moment they need guidance, and your testimony can continue to impact lives long after this message ends. This is not a message to rush through. It is not shared for entertainment or attention. It is a serious and timely revelation, and I encourage you to stay with me until the very end so nothing important is missed. With humility and care, I will now begin sharing today's experience. Before I go any further, I must ask something of you. If you're watching this, if you've stumbled upon these videos through whatever means brought you here, please understand that I'm breaking protocol to share this message. I cannot reveal my name. I cannot disclose my rank or my squadron. The mention of these details would immediately identify me, and in doing so, would violate the code of ethics I've sworn to uphold as a military officer. But what I witnessed in those moments between life and death transcends any earthly code, any military regulation, any concern for my career or reputation. I am a fighter jet pilot. For over 15 years, I have served my country in the cockpit of some of the most advanced aircraft ever designed. I've flown missions that tested every limit of human endurance and machine capability. I've experienced G-forces that pushed my body to the edge of consciousness. I've navigated through conditions that would make most people's nightmares seem tame. I am a woman in a field still dominated by men, and I've earned every single hour of flight time through dedication, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. But nothing in my training, nothing in my experience, nothing in my wildest imagination could have prepared me for what happened 3 days ago. It was supposed to be a routine day. We were scheduled for training exercises that morning, standard maneuvers that we'd all executed hundreds of times before. The pre-flight briefing had been unremarkable. Weather conditions were optimal. Aircraft systems were all green. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should. I arrived at the facility early, as is my habit. I was alone in the locker room that morning. Most of the other pilots were still in the briefing room or conducting their own pre-flight preparations. I remember reaching for my flight boots, one hand gripping the edge of the bench to maintain balance as I lifted my foot. That's when it happened. The pain was instantaneous and absolute. It felt as though someone had driven a white-hot spike directly through the center of my chest. My vision immediately blurred, the edges of my sight darkening as if someone was slowly closing curtains over my eyes. I tried to call out, tried to reach for the emergency button on the wall, but my body had stopped responding to my commands. I felt myself falling, the cold concrete floor rushing up to meet me. My flight suit, only half fastened, twisted awkwardly around my body as I collapsed. The impact should have hurt, but I felt nothing. The pain in my chest had consumed every other sensation, a crushing, tearing agony that seemed to be ripping me apart from the inside. Then, in an instant, the pain vanished. What I experienced next defies every principle of physics I've studied, every law of nature I've observed in my years of flight. I felt myself lifting away from my body, rising with a gentleness that seemed impossible given the violence of what had just occurred. Looking down, I saw my own form crumpled on the locker room floor. My flight suit was disheveled, one boot on, one still on the bench where I'd left it. My face had taken on a grayish pallor that I recognized from combat casualty training. I was dying. Or more accurately, I had already died. But instead of fear, instead of panic, I felt an overwhelming peace. It was as if every burden I'd ever carried, every stress, every anxiety, every weight of responsibility had been lifted from me in a single moment. I was free in a way I'd never experienced, not even in the limitless sky at the controls of my aircraft. The locker room began to fade. The walls didn't crumble or dissolve. They simply became less real, less substantial, as if they were made of mist rather than concrete and steel. I found myself moving through dimensions that my training as a pilot, my education in physics and engineering, had never even hinted at. I saw colors that don't exist in the visible spectrum. I'm trained to understand electromagnetic radiation, to know the precise wavelengths of visible light, but what I was seeing now was beyond that framework entirely. These were hues that carried meaning, that communicated emotions and truths directly to my consciousness without the need for words. There was music, but calling it music feels inadequate. It was more like the fundamental harmony of existence itself, a symphony that touched not just my ears but my very essence. Every note contained galaxies of meaning, every chord progression told stories of love and redemption that spanned eternities. I was moving toward a light. In all the near-death accounts I'd ever heard, this detail had always seemed like a cliché, a cultural construct imposed on experiences that people struggled to articulate. But experiencing it myself, I understood why this description appears again and again. There's simply no other way to explain it. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. It didn't hurt to look at. Instead, it was welcoming, warm, and alive with a love so pure and unconditional that it made every human affection I'd ever known seem like a pale shadow by comparison. As I drew closer to the light, I saw a figure walking toward me through the radiance. I knew immediately who it was, though I'd never seen him before. His presence carried an authority that reminded me of the finest commanders I'd ever served under, those rare individuals who commanded absolute respect through their character rather than their rank. But this was different, infinitely greater. This was Jesus Christ. His eyes held depths I cannot adequately describe. They contained compassion beyond measure, wisdom beyond time, and a love so fierce and protective that I felt simultaneously unworthy and completely accepted. When he spoke, his voice resonated through every fiber of my being. He called me by name. I won't share that name with you. I cannot, for the reasons I've already explained, but hearing it from his lips sent waves of indescribable joy cascading through my entire existence. He told me that he had brought me to this place because there was something his people desperately needed to understand. He revealed to me that a window of time was approaching, a specific period when the veil between the spiritual and physical realms would become thin, when heaven would intersect with earth in ways that would astound and awaken those who had eyes to see. What he showed me next will stay with me for the rest of my life. The space around us transformed, and I found myself looking at what appeared to be a vast panoramic display of the earth, specifically focused on my nation. But this wasn't a satellite image or a tactical display. I could see the spiritual temperature of every location, the ebb and flow of light and darkness, the movements of forces both heavenly and demonic. He told me to watch carefully, to observe what he was about to reveal concerning specific days that were approaching, February 3rd through February 9th. He showed me that these dates represented a convergence point, a moment when the spiritual and physical realms would intersect in unprecedented ways. He revealed to me that during this 7-day window he would be removing veils and clearing obstacles that have prevented his people from seeing clearly and operating in the fullness of their calling. He showed me that this was not a random occurrence but a strategically planned operation, executed with the precision of the most sophisticated military campaign I'd ever studied. What he showed me next was unexpected. The entire revelation centered on one particular segment of the population, the elderly. Grandparents, widows, retirees, nursing home residents, veterans in their later years, senior citizens who had been pushed to the margins of society and even to the edges of church life. He told me that this 7-day period from February 3rd through February 9th was a consecrated launch window, a tithe of time for the entire year. He revealed that during these specific days, he would activate elderly believers as his primary instruments of intercession, discernment, healing, warning, and national protection. He showed me vision after vision of seniors across the nation, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, suddenly being awakened, empowered, and commissioned by God for assignments of critical importance. These weren't people who had been prominent in ministry or well-known in their communities. Most were ordinary, overlooked, considered past their prime by the world's standards. But he revealed to me that these were the ones he was choosing. He told me that rather than being sidelined or retired, these seniors were about to be refired, reignited with supernatural power and purpose for the most crucial season of their lives. I asked him why he was focusing specifically on the elderly during this window. His answer was profound and multi-layered. He told me that seniors possess something younger generations have not yet acquired, the wisdom that comes from long experience. They have lived through enough seasons to recognize patterns. They have weathered enough storms to know how to stand when the winds blow. They have seen enough of life to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't. He revealed that elderly believers have buried enough loved ones to value eternal things over temporary pleasures. They understand mortality in a way the young cannot. This understanding makes them ready for the depth of revelation he was about to release. He showed me that seniors have fewer earthly distractions than younger people. Their children are grown. Their careers are finished. The ambitions and competitions that consume the young no longer hold sway over them. This creates a clarity and focus that makes them ideal instruments for spiritual warfare. He told me that the elderly have lived long enough to recognize his voice when he speaks. They have accumulated decades of walking with him, learning his ways, understanding his character. When he gives them an assignment, they won't waste time questioning whether it's really him or whether they heard correctly. He revealed that seniors have developed a level of faithfulness and persistence that only comes with time. They have learned to pray without seeing immediate results, to trust when circumstances contradict his promises, to stand firm when others fall away. This makes them his most reliable warriors. Most importantly, he showed me that the elderly are nearing the end of their earthly journey. This creates an urgency and a clarity about what matters. They have no time for games, for politics, for maintaining appearances. They will speak truth regardless of consequences because they understand that eternity is approaching and earthly opinions no longer carry weight. The visions he shared with me came in rapid succession, each one revealing different aspects of how he would move through elderly believers during this 7-day window from February 3rd through February 9th. He showed me nursing homes and assisted living facilities across the nation. In these places, on February 3rd and continuing through the week, supernatural clarity would descend upon residents who had been trapped in confusion. He revealed that individuals suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's would experience temporary lifting of the fog, not as a permanent medical healing, but as a strategic spiritual activation. He told me about seniors who hadn't recognized their own children in years who would suddenly have crystal clear minds. He showed me that during this window of clarity, they would deliver prophetic warnings to their families, speak words of wisdom that would redirect entire family lines, and pray prayers that would break generational curses. He revealed that in hospitals where elderly patients lay dying on February 4th through February 6th specifically, there would be supernatural extensions of life, not because it was their time to be healed, but because he had final assignments for them to complete. He showed me that some who were expected to die would rally with unexplainable strength, deliver critical messages to medical staff or family members, and then peacefully transition only after their mission was accomplished. He told me about veterans in VA hospitals and retirement communities. He showed me that on February 5th, many of these elderly warriors would receive angelic visitations. He revealed that these men and women who had fought physical battles for their nation would be recommissioned to fight spiritual battles. Their years of military discipline and understanding of warfare would translate directly into spiritual combat, and they would become powerful intercessors standing watch over the nation they had already bled for. He began to show me the specific nature of the authority he was releasing to elderly believers during this window. The visions intensified, and I saw the spiritual mechanics of how their prayers would function. He revealed that on February 3rd, the opening day of this window, there would be a shift in the spiritual atmosphere over the United States. He showed me that the prayers of seniors would suddenly carry a weight and authority they hadn't possessed before. He told me that when an elderly believer spoke a decree during this 7-day period, it would impact the spiritual realm with the force of a precision-guided weapon. He showed me grandmothers in their 80s and 90s, many confined to wheelchairs or beds, whose quiet prayers in spare bedrooms and nursing home rooms would create spiritual no-fly zones over entire cities. He revealed that demonic forces planning to infiltrate schools, businesses, and government buildings would be repelled by the intercession of these seemingly powerless elderly women. He told me about grandfathers who would receive supernatural intelligence about spiritual attacks being prepared against their families. He showed me that on February 6th and 7th particularly, many senior men would have dreams and visions revealing hidden dangers, addictions forming in grandchildren, financial traps being set, health crises approaching, and their prayers would dismantle these attacks before they fully manifested. He revealed that elderly believers living alone, forgotten by society, would become his strategic command centers. He showed me their small apartments and modest houses lighting up on his spiritual radar like military installations. From these humble locations, prayers would be launched that would protect neighborhoods, influence city councils, and even affect national-level decisions. He showed me that beginning on February 4th and building throughout the week, there would be a wave of healings specifically targeting the elderly. But he clarified that these healings served a strategic purpose. They were not primarily about comfort or extending earthly life, but about removing physical limitations that would prevent seniors from completing their assignments. He revealed elderly believers who had been unable to walk without assistance suddenly finding their strength restored. He showed me arthritic joints becoming fluid, painful conditions subsiding, energy returning to bodies that had been depleted. He told me that these physical improvements would enable seniors to go places, speak to people, and accomplish tasks that would be critical to his purposes. He showed me that on February 7th specifically, there would be a restoration of spiritual gifts that had been dormant for years. He revealed seniors who had operated in gifts of prophecy, healing, or words of knowledge decades earlier but had seen those gifts fade would suddenly find them reactivated with even greater intensity. He told me about elderly believers who had lost their passion for prayer, whose once vibrant intercession had become routine and mechanical, who would find themselves reignited with a fervor they hadn't experienced since their youth. He showed me that they would spend hours in prayer during this window without fatigue, carried by a supernatural grace that transcended their natural limitations. The visions shifted, and he showed me the strategic role elderly believers would play in protecting the United States during this window and beyond. He revealed that from February 3rd through February 9th, he was positioning senior intercessors like a defensive perimeter around the nation. He showed me that their prayers would form a spiritual wall that would blunt and dismantle attacks that were already in motion. He told me about economic attacks that were being prepared, market manipulations designed to cause crashes, schemes to undermine the currency, plans to trigger financial panic. He showed me that the prayers of elderly believers during this 7-day window would expose these plots, confuse the perpetrators, and cause their schemes to backfire. He revealed plans for civil unrest and violence that had been carefully orchestrated for specific cities. He showed me that the intercession of seniors in those very cities would create such spiritual disruption in the enemy's camp that coordination would break down, participants would change their minds, and the violence would either be greatly diminished or prevented entirely. He told me about spiritual deceptions being prepared, false teachings, doctrines of demons, philosophies designed to lead masses away from truth. He showed me that elderly believers who had decades of grounding in Scripture and experience walking with him would have supernatural discernment to recognize these deceptions. Their warnings, even if dismissed by the sophisticated and educated, would plant seeds of doubt that would prevent many from being fully deceived. He revealed that on February 8th specifically, there would be a massive coordinated intercessory effort. He showed me that across the nation, elderly believers who didn't know each other, who had never met or communicated, would find themselves praying for the same things at the same times. Their prayers would synchronize in the spiritual realm, creating a unified barrier of protection over the entire nation. He showed me that one of the primary assignments for elderly believers during this window would be the restoration and realignment of families. He revealed that many grandparents would receive specific intelligence about their children and grandchildren, hidden struggles, secret sins, dangerous paths being pursued. He told me that on February 5th and 6th particularly, he would open the eyes of senior family members to see what had been concealed from them. He showed me grandmothers who would be given the exact words to speak to prodigal grandchildren. He revealed that when these elderly women spoke, their words would carry such anointing that rebellious hearts would crack, hard exteriors would crumble, and tears of repentance would flow. He told me about grandfathers who had been dismissed as out of touch and irrelevant who would suddenly speak with such authority that entire families would fall silent and listen. He showed me that these elderly men would deliver warnings about destructive paths and prophecies about destinies, and their words would redirect family trajectories for generations to come. He revealed that elderly believers who had lost influence in their families due to age or health challenges would find that influence suddenly restored and magnified. He showed me family gatherings during this week where the oldest member present would become the focal point, where God would manifest His presence tangibly when that senior saint spoke. One of the most striking aspects of what he showed me was the contrast between the power flowing through elderly believers and the impotence of established institutions. He revealed that on February 3rd through February 9th, the prayers whispered by an 85-year-old widow in her bedroom would accomplish more than the most sophisticated technology or the most influential political connections. He showed me that quiet intercession from seniors would override and reverse decisions made in boardrooms and government chambers. He told me that while megachurches with impressive facilities and large staffs would struggle to see genuine spiritual breakthrough, elderly believers meeting in modest living rooms would host the manifest presence of God. He showed me that the spiritual power would flow not through those with platforms and microphones, but through those with gray hair and weathered hands. He revealed that nursing homes and senior living facilities, places the world views as warehouses for the dying, would become some of the most spiritually significant locations in the nation during this window. He showed me that more authentic spiritual warfare would be waged from these places than from prominent ministries or well-funded organizations. He told me about retired pastors, missionaries, and ministry workers who had felt cast aside after their productive years ended. He showed me that on February 7th and 8th specifically, many of these individuals would receive visitations, either angelic encounters or His direct presence, commissioning them for their most important work yet. What they would accomplish through prayer and intercession during this season would far exceed anything they had done in their years of public ministry. He began to show me the mechanics of the spiritual warfare that would be waged through elderly believers during this window. These visions were intense, revealing dimensions of spiritual conflict I had barely conceived of before. He revealed that on February 4th, many seniors would begin to perceive the demonic structures that had been erected over their communities, strongholds of addiction, grids of sexual immorality, networks of deception and division. He showed me that they would receive specific strategies for dismantling these structures through targeted intercession. He told me that elderly prayer warriors would be given the ability to see into the spiritual realm with unprecedented clarity during this 7-day window. They would perceive demonic assignments against individuals and be able to pray with precision to neutralize those assignments. They would discern territorial spirits claiming authority over regions and would know exactly how to challenge and displace those spirits through declaration and decree. He showed me that on February 6th specifically, there would be a massive confrontation in the spiritual realm. Forces of darkness that had operated with relative freedom would suddenly encounter fierce resistance from a source they had dismissed and overlooked: the elderly. He revealed that demons would be shocked and routed by the authority flowing through these senior saints. He told me that the intercession of elderly believers during this window would accomplish strategic victories that would have ripple effects for years to come. Demonic strongholds that had resisted efforts to dislodge them for decades would suddenly crumble under the prayers of grandmothers and grandfathers who understood persistence and refused to quit. He showed me that February 9th, the final day of this 7-day window, would be particularly significant. This would be the culmination, the sealing of everything that had been released during the previous days. He revealed that on this day, there would be a final impartation given to elderly believers who had engaged fully with the window. He showed me a spiritual mantle being placed upon them, a robe of authority that would remain for the rest of their earthly days. This mantle would mark them as His chosen envoys, ambassadors carrying His authority for the season ahead. He told me that seniors who received this mantle on February 9th would never be the same. Their prayers would continue to carry unusual weight and power. Their words would continue to impact the spiritual realm with precision and force. They would operate for the remainder of their lives with a level of spiritual authority that would make them invaluable assets in the battles to come. He showed me that the assignments given during this 7-day window would provide direction and purpose for years, even for those in advanced age. He revealed that many elderly believers would receive multi-year mandates, comprehensive strategies that would guide their intercession and activity for the remainder of their lives. He revealed that relationships forged during this window, prayer partnerships formed, connections made between seniors pursuing similar assignments, would become critical networks of mutual support and strategic coordination. These networks would function like spiritual special forces units, small teams of highly skilled operators executing precision missions. His tone shifted, and I felt the weight of warning intensify. He told me that it was critically important that seniors understand the opportunity before them and the cost of missing it. He revealed that this window from February 3rd through February 9th was sovereign. It was not something that could be repeated or extended based on human preference. The spiritual dynamics creating this opening were aligned in a way that wouldn't occur again. Missing this window meant missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He showed me the grief and regret that would fill seniors who came to the end of these 7 days and realized they had squandered the time. He let me feel a measure of what they would experience. The crushing knowledge that they had been offered something extraordinary and had let it slip away because they were distracted, because they didn't believe it was real, or because they simply didn't prioritize it. He told me that many would come to the end of their lives and look back at this window as the greatest missed opportunity of their entire existence. They would see clearly, from the perspective of eternity, what could have been accomplished, what impact they could have had, what legacy they could have left, and they would mourn the loss. He revealed that the opposite was also true. Those who fully engaged with this window, who cleared their schedules and devoted themselves to prayer and seeking His face during these 7 days, would look back from eternity with joy and satisfaction at having completed their most important assignment. The impact of what they accomplished during this brief window would cascade through generations. He began to give me specific instructions about how seniors should prepare for this window. This was practical guidance, tactical preparation for the spiritual operation he was planning. He told me that elderly believers should begin preparing immediately. They should clear their calendars as much as possible for February 3rd through February 9th. Appointments that could be rescheduled should be moved. Social obligations that weren't critical should be declined. Entertainment and leisure activities should be set aside. These 7 days needed to be treated as sacred time, as mission critical. He revealed that seniors should set up prayer spaces in their homes, dedicated areas where they could spend extended time seeking Him without interruption. These didn't need to be elaborate, just quiet places free from distraction where they could focus fully on Him. He told me that fasting should be incorporated during at least part of this window. For those with health conditions that prevented traditional fasting, he showed me that fasting could take other forms, abstaining from television, social media, phone calls, or other normal activities that consume time and attention. The point was to remove distractions and heighten spiritual sensitivity. He showed me that seniors should examine their hearts before the window opened. He revealed that unconfessed sin, unforgiveness, and unresolved bitterness would create interference that would diminish their ability to receive clearly and operate effectively during these days. He told me that repentance and reconciliation needed to happen before February 3rd. He revealed that elderly believers should ask Him specifically for assignments. They shouldn't assume they knew what He wanted them to focus on. They needed to ask, listen, and wait for His direction. The assignments would be specific and tailored to each individual's unique positioning and gifting. He told me that seniors should prepare to write down what they received. During this window, he would be releasing detailed intelligence, specific strategies, and precise instructions. These couldn't be trusted to memory alone. They needed to be documented so they could be referenced and acted upon after the window closed. He showed me that one of the most important qualities seniors would need during this window was boldness. He revealed that many of the assignments he would give would require them to step outside their comfort zones, to speak when it felt awkward, to pray in situations that seemed inappropriate, to declare things that sounded presumptuous. He told me that elderly believers have often been conditioned to be quiet, to not make waves, to defer to younger voices. He showed me that during this window and in the season ahead, they would need to break free from that conditioning. When he prompted them to speak, they needed to speak regardless of who disagreed or who felt uncomfortable. He revealed that many grandparents would be given difficult words to deliver to their children and grandchildren. These words would challenge life choices, expose deceptions, and call out sin. Delivering these messages would risk relationships and could result in rejection. But he showed me that obedience was more important than maintaining comfortable family dynamics. He told me about elderly church members who would be given assignments to confront leaders, challenge teachings, or speak prophetically into their congregations. This would be countercultural and might result in them being labeled as troublemakers or dismissed as senile. But he showed me that his approval mattered more than human acceptance. He revealed that seniors operating in the authority he was releasing during this window would face opposition not just from the enemy but from other believers who felt threatened or who didn't understand what was happening. He showed me that they needed to be prepared for this resistance and not be deterred by it. He began to show me the long-term impact of what would be accomplished through elderly believers during this 7-day window. The visions expanded beyond the immediate time frame to reveal cascading effects that would extend far into the future. He revealed that prayers prayed by seniors during February 3rd through February 9th would establish protective boundaries around families that would remain in place for decades. He showed me grandchildren not yet born who would be spared from tragedies and delivered from dangers because of intercession offered during this window. He told me that warnings delivered by elderly believers during these days would plant seeds that wouldn't bear visible fruit immediately but would eventually save lives and redirect destinies. He showed me individuals who would dismiss the warnings at first but would remember them years later in critical moments, and those memories would provide the wisdom needed to make right choices. He revealed that the spiritual infrastructure established through senior intercession during this window, the prayer networks, the defensive perimeters, the strategic positions claimed in the spiritual realm, would remain intact and continue to provide protection and breakthrough long after the intercessors themselves had transitioned to eternity. He showed me that many elderly believers participating in this window wouldn't live to see the full fruition of what they were establishing. But he showed me that from their perspective in eternity, they would watch with joy as the seeds they planted during these 7 days grew into mighty oaks that sheltered generations. He showed me that the entire window from February 3rd through February 9th represented a supernatural convergence, a moment when multiple factors aligned to create unique conditions for breakthrough. He revealed that in the spiritual realm, there were cycles and seasons, times when the veil was thicker and times when it was thinner. This 7-day period represented one of those rare moments when the barrier between heaven and earth would be at its thinnest for the year. He told me that he had been preparing elderly believers for this moment for decades, even when they didn't realize it. Every trial they had walked through, every season of waiting they had endured, every disappointment they had processed, all of it had been preparation for this window and what would come after it. He showed me that the enemy was also aware that something significant was approaching. He revealed that there would be intensified attacks against seniors in the days leading up to February 3rd, sudden health crises, family conflicts, discouragement, confusion. These attacks were designed to take them out of position before the window even opened. He told me that seniors needed to be alert to these preemptive strikes and recognize them for what they were. Physical symptoms that appeared suddenly, family dramas that erupted out of nowhere, overwhelming fatigue or depression that descended without clear cause, these could be enemy tactics to prevent participation in what was coming. I felt his presence beginning to withdraw, and I knew my time in this place was ending. He gave me a final, urgent instruction. I was to deliver this message without apology, without softening its urgency, and without concern for how it would be received. He told me that the window was approaching rapidly. At the time of my encounter with him, February 3rd was only days away. Every moment of delay in delivering this message reduced the time seniors would have to prepare. He showed me that my unique perspective as a military pilot, someone who understood mission-critical timing, who knew that windows of opportunity close and cannot be reopened, made me the right messenger for this particular word. The urgency I would naturally communicate was exactly what was needed. Then the brilliant light began to fade. The dimensional expanse collapsed back into the concrete reality of the physical world. I felt the crushing weight of my body returning, felt pain flooding back into my chest, felt the hardness of the floor beneath me. I heard voices shouting, felt hands pressing on my sternum, felt the shocking jolt of electricity from defibrillator paddles. "We've got a pulse. She's back. Stay with us." My eyes opened to harsh fluorescent lights and the concerned faces of emergency medical personnel. I was still on the floor of the locker room, but now surrounded by equipment and uniformed first responders. Someone was asking me questions, checking my pupils, monitoring my vital signs. The next several hours were a blur of tests and examinations. The medical team was baffled. My heart had stopped for several minutes. The exact time was documented by security cameras and the emergency response logs. But I had no apparent brain damage, no organ failure, no lasting effects that they could detect. Every test came back normal. They used words like miraculous and inexplicable while shaking their heads. I couldn't tell them what had really happened. How could I explain that I had been given a message for the elderly population of the United States? How could I describe visions of spiritual warfare and divine appointments without sounding delusional? So I remained mostly quiet, processed through their protocols, and waited for my release. For the past 3 days, I've carried this message, wrestling with how to deliver it while protecting my identity and maintaining the security my position requires. I've prayed constantly for wisdom, for the right words, for the courage to speak plainly about things that sound extraordinary. I'm not asking you to believe me based on credentials or proof. I'm not offering evidence that would satisfy skeptics. I'm simply telling you what happened and delivering the message I was given. If you're reading this and you're in your senior years, if you're a grandmother or grandfather, a widow or widower, a retiree living alone, a veteran in your later years, a nursing home resident, or simply someone the world considers past your prime, please hear this. You have not been set aside. You have not been forgotten. You are not irrelevant or useless. The greatest assignment of your entire life is directly ahead of you. February 3rd through February 9th is your launch window. This is not a suggestion or an invitation you can respond to at your convenience. This is a divine summons. What you do during these 7 days will echo through eternity and will impact generations not yet born. I'm pleading with you. If you're elderly and you're reading this, clear your schedule for February 3rd through February 9th. I don't care what you had planned. I don't care if it seems inconvenient. I don't care if people think you're being extreme. Clear your schedule. Set up a place in your home where you can pray without interruption. Stock your refrigerator so you don't need to go shopping during these days. Tell your family you won't be available for non-emergency matters. Turn off your television. Put away your phone except for true emergencies. Prepare to spend significant portions of each day seeking His face and listening for His voice. Examine your heart now, before the window opens. If there's anyone you need to forgive, do it now. If there's sin you need to confess, don't wait. If there are relationships that need to be reconciled, begin that process immediately. Don't enter this window carrying burdens that will interfere with your ability to receive clearly and operate effectively. Ask Him for your specific assignment. Don't assume you know what He wants you to focus on. Don't just default to praying generally for your family or your nation. Ask for the detailed, specific mandate He has prepared for you. Then listen. Write down what you receive. Prepare to be stretched beyond your comfort zone. Prepare to speak when it's awkward. Prepare to pray in situations that seem unusual. Prepare to look foolish in the eyes of those who don't understand. Your obedience to what He shows you is more important than maintaining your reputation or avoiding conflict. If you're reading this and you have parents, grandparents, elderly neighbors, or senior friends, please share this message with them immediately. Don't wait. Don't assume they'll stumble across it on their own. The window is only days away, and many elderly believers have no idea this opportunity exists. Print this out if they're not comfortable with technology. Read it to them if their eyesight is failing. Summarize it if they can't process long documents. But get this message to them by any means necessary. If you work in a nursing home or assisted living facility, find ways to share this with the residents who are believers. If you're a pastor or ministry leader, Dedicate your services before February 3rd to communicating this message to your elderly members. If you're younger but have influence with seniors, use that influence to ensure they're aware of what's coming. The enemy would love nothing more than for this message to be suppressed, dismissed, or delayed until the window has already passed. Don't let that happen. Fight to get this word into the hands of every senior believer you know or can reach. If you're reading this and you're not yet in your senior years, your role is also critical. You need to honor, support, and facilitate what God is doing through the elderly during this window. If you have parents or grandparents who are believers, clear your schedule to help them during February 3rd through 9th. Offer to handle their errands, manage their appointments, watch their homes, whatever would free them to focus on prayer during these days. If you're a pastor or leader, elevate the voices of your elderly members during the season. Give them platforms to share what God is showing them. Don't dismiss their words as the ramblings of old age. Recognize that God is speaking through them with critical urgency. If you're in a position to protect elderly believers from attacks, whether physical, financial, or social, be especially vigilant during this period. The enemy will try to disrupt what God is doing through them. Stand guard so they can focus on their assignments. Most importantly, listen to what elderly believers are saying during and after this window. They will be carrying messages, warnings, and wisdom that you need to hear. Don't be so arrogant as to dismiss them because of their age or because their words challenge your plans or preferences. As I complete this account, February 3rd is approaching rapidly. The window is about to open. The opportunity is at hand. The question is whether you'll step through or stand aside. I've delivered the message I was given. I've sounded the alarm I was commissioned to sound. I've broken protocol and risked my career to ensure this word reaches those who need to hear it. The rest is between you and God. To every senior reading this, you are not too old. You are not too weak. You are not too ordinary. You are not disqualified by your past failures or your present limitations. God has saved His finest assignments for this season of your life, and the launch window is here. February 3rd through February 9th. 7 days that could define your legacy, impact generations, and protect a nation. Don't let this window close without stepping into everything God has prepared for you. The choice is yours. The mission is before you. The time is now. May God grant you wisdom, courage, and sensitivity to His voice in the days ahead. May you step boldly into your calling. May you complete the assignment you were born for. The window is opening. What will you do?